Welcome to Know Your Money, where we will explore our relationship with money and how the psychology of it impacts our financial decisions, as everyone thinks about money differently. In our podcast, we'll be presenting a variety of financial topics in an easy-to-understand way, which we hope will assist you with managing your money. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Know Your Money. Craig, Warren, how are you guys today?
Me first, Warren.
Indeed.
All good. How are you, Warren?
I'm well, and you, Craig, and
Good.
you, Bronwyn.
I'm very well,
Bron,
thank
all
you.
good?
Yes, all good.
Yep.
Another week.
Another
Great week.
Yeah.
Yes, another week, another podcast,
Yeah.
another hopeful,
Almost.
helpful.
Yeah,
One.
almost in the new studio, guys. Not quite.
Yay, can't
Yeah,
wait.
yeah,
We're going to be live soon to
yeah.
Craig's
Craig
horror.
wants to be on video. He's very
Yeah.
excited.
Air-conditioned studio, Warren,
No,
I hope.
If you're going to fund it, Craig, no problem.
Okay, so Craig got an interesting email from a client the other day asking if we could possibly do a podcast on a topic. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what the email was?
Sure. It's an estate planning question. One of my clients, their parents are not well. They're really not well. Unfortunately, dementia has crept in, and I think this is becoming more prevalent to parents who are living longer and they have issues, mental issues, and they don't know who they are and where they are and all the rest of it. So generally the children are taking over the affairs and try to run with the bank accounts, and it's actually quite a problem in our industry, in my view, because to declare somebody incapable, you need to go to a court and declare them incapable. You can't just have power of attorney. Yeah, we think we should do a podcast on that as well, because it actually is a huge issue. But the question was, they're trying to get their parents' affairs in order, and the question was, my goodness, when this day does arrive and they pass on, what are the costs? Are there costs in them passing on, and who pays what? So I think that's an important one. Is there government taxes? Is state duty? What are the actual practical costs? And I think they're a lot more than we realize.
Yeah, and that's why within our practice we use a company called Capital Legacy, who is a company that winds up estates. That's their main job. And like one of the biggest things that they have is a legacy protection plan. And that is for exactly what you're sort of saying too. You don't want all these costs to eat away from your legacy that you want to leave your family. And people don't necessarily realize what all those costs are. So we thought it might be good to go over their legacy protection plan and the different areas that they sort of identify. So the first one is in an indemnity benefit. So this is the really significant stuff that comes along, which is the executor, which Craig can explain who that is, conveyancing attorneys, and then testamentary trust fees if anything has to go into a trust. So do you want to explain maybe those indemnity?
Well, I think the first one is at 3.5%. That's
Excl VAT.
Yeah, Excl VAT. So it comes to just over 4%. I think 4.06%. What the executor would charge to wind the estate up. Essentially, what happens is they have to take all the assets that the client has. For example, the properties, cash in the bank account, and any other assets they might have, the cars, furniture, share portfolios, etc. And unfortunately, your life ends up on a balance sheet, and that balance sheet goes, positive and negative on the balance sheet, and you get a net result, and that balance sheet goes to the master, and they approve of the distribution of the estate. So the executor is the approved people, like Capital Legacy, or it might be an attorney, it might be a family member, but you have to be approved by the master, and the master says, okay, we're happy that company or that person runs this estate, winds the estate up. So essentially it handles all the assets, puts it in one place, distributes it to the correct people, to what the will said, and then there's costs involved. And this is, I think, what we're trying to get to today is the costs. So the first cost is a 3.5% plus VAT, which is 4.025%. That's the accurate number, and that comes off. But then if it's a second estate, so in other words, if it's the father passes on to the mother, the passing on of the first estate, there's no There's no estate duty. We're talking about estate duty now, no estate duty. But you're always going to pay the 3.5%.
So estate duty is a separate thing to executor fees.
Yeah.
So when you say executor fees, so if a married couple, the husband dies and the estate is passed on via the will purely to the wife, you have to pay the executor to do that.
Yes, because there's fees involved to transfer the estate because you have now left the earth and now your assets are going to be transferred to your wife.
But aren't you seen as a legal identity in a marriage? Why would there be fees involved to pass it on to your spouse?
So I think you're kind of referring to like if community of property sort of way of being married, that's also different, and there are actually still fees. Community of property can be worse because once you pass away, you're seen as one person together. So all your stuff and her stuff, there's executor fees on the entirety of it, not just on half of it. So executor fees, like Craig was explaining, is on the properties you own, on the car, on any like sort of money in your bank, any unit trusts, those kind of things. They need to find out where they are. And whatever is there, they are allowed to charge up to that 4.025%. So that cost gets forgotten about by a lot of people. And on top of that is the conveyancing attorney. So transferring of properties to your wife, you just experienced that with your transfer duty.
Yes, yeah.
That is another cost
fee.
that comes
More expensive
in.
than you think.
Absolutely.
So that could be you could own the house with your wife 50-50 and you pass away. They have to transfer the house into her name now.
The other 50.
For the other 50%, the conveyancing fee for that. So the government tax, the estate duty between husband and wife doesn't kick in because you can transfer everything across. Estate duty comes later. So these are the costs just that are happening now.
Right.
Plus you got the funeral expenses.
So on there still is the testamentary trust. So if you you want to leave some stuff to your children and it has to go into a trust.
Because they're under 18 or under whatever age you've decided. Yeah.
Yes. So, for example, if you both pass away or you do want to leave a portion to your children in a trust, there's actually quite a lot of trust fees. So you have to pay people to be a trustee of a trust. You have to put the trust together. So people don't really think about or know what those fees cost.
And it's not a trust while you're alive. It kicks in when you pass away. It's called a testamentary trust, different trust.
So is there, between a husband and wife then, is there a tax from the government?
No.
What about between parents and children?
Yes. There is a tax between parents and children. So
an inheritance tax.
Yeah, inheritance tax. But what happens there is that, let's say the father passes first, all the assets go to the mother, and there's a 3.5 million rand that's passed on to the mother. And when the mother dies, she carries the father's plus hers, 7 million to the children. So the estate over 7 million up to 30 million is taxed at 20%. So the kids will have to absorb that. So anything over 7 million, probably expect another 20% of government tax. Plus, you're still going to pay the 3.5 or the 4.025 executor fees to wind the estate up to put it to bed. Plus the conveyancing if you're going to accept the property.
That's...
So also what Craig is saying, I think we just have to be clear with that 7 million is only if the husband dies and leaves everything to the wife.
Yeah.
She then gets to take his 3.5 million. But his 3.5 million abatement, because we all allowed 3.5 million free of estate duty. But if he passes and he leaves the children 3.5 million rand and the residue to his wife, when she dies, only has the 3.5 million that can be deducted. And executor fees and estate duty are two different costs. So that's this executor fee, that 4% that we're talking about, is one of the costs.
Yeah.
The 20% is another one of the costs.
Which is the estate duty.
Yes.
Effectively inheritance tax.
And also, I do find a lot of people don't leave everything to their spouse. They want to leave things to their children because they don't realize the impact that it actually has.
And so is it better then to not leave it directly to your children if you still have your spouse?
Yes.
Financially?
Financially, yes, but person to person,
person
you've got to...
That's right.
You've got to...
Yeah,
check
so
that.
I think that there are other costs involved.
Yes,
I mean,
so
the
another
funeral
one is, your-
obviously the funeral that you got to provide for, and then there are other things that could happen. Eh?
Yeah, so I mean what they refer to here is the principal indemnity liquidity is the cash amount that's for unforeseen expenses like the funeral and all of that. So
What
they
happens if the parents have outstanding debts? Does the executor have to pay those debts
Yes.
before anything is then passed on?
Correct.
yes, and that's what Craig was saying. The balance,
balance
sheets,
sheet has
like
to
the
balance.
yes, and then yeah.
Okay. See, I'm
Yeah.
very slow, guys.
Not at all.
No,
No, it's complicated.
But you got to help us because we talk faster than I
Yeah.
think what
Yeah,
we,
I
you
think-
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, then the estate overhead protector is what they call that. And then this is like the overheads of your estate, like Craig was referring to the master. You've got to pay a fee to the master's fee, property clearance, and then monthly expenses such as insurance and medical aid. What they mean by that is like sometimes the medical aid or insurance is on your dad's
Yeah.
account. When you pass away, that bank gets frozen. So if all the money's in there, how are you going to pay for your medical aid premium to carry on going and your
Right,
insurance?
Yes.
So you've got to kind of have that buffer, and this is the overhead protector thing that they also refer to having.
Right. So this is the policy that they offer, the capital legacy.
Yes, but
yeah.
the point is you don't necessarily need the policy. You might need these amounts of money, but like we found that the policy is just so helpful because it gives you that peace of mind. You don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But Warren, you can have the money set aside for
Yeah,
these things. But
yeah.
just to realize there's not just 3.5%, or there's a lot more cost that comes
There's a
down.
significant amount, isn't
Yeah,
it?
no, there is. One good point about the retirement annuities, we've spoken about those before, and pension funds. The retirement annuity falls out the estate, so that 3.5% doesn't apply,
Yes.
which is very good. So that it goes directly to, well, hopefully the beneficiaries you nominate, and endowment policies and life policies go directly to the people you nominate. So
Right.
It's got a nominated beneficiary. The executor doesn't have to go, okay, who's this, who's
Yeah.
that, and it just
so
pays.
it doesn't fall under the umbrella of assets he has to look at.
From an
Or
executor
she, yeah.
perspective,
Yeah,
but
so I
from an
mean-
estate duty
Duties.
perspective,
Oh my
some
God.
of it does
Yeah,
fall
yeah.
in. So it's,
yeah,
but I think that's for another
It's so
episode.
complicated.
no, but that's where we're here to
Well,
help
I mean,
you.
if you pay tax on your income, right? Why is the government coming after you after you die?
Well, it's worldwide that, eh?
That's wild.
And there's capital gains tax as well, by the way. So it's another.
That is wild.
But so life assurance policy has a very valuable place for everybody because
Yeah.
there are those expenses that Bronwyn mentioned, all those other ones that the medical aid has to be paid still, the property clearance
Yeah.
has to be paid, all those things you can have directly to the person inheriting their estate, and they have the money to deal with those type of expenses that you don't normally have.
And I think that was a really good point that you also brought up now is the capital gains tax. So if you buy a property for something and it's really done well and it's worth like, let's say 3 times the amount, you also have to factor in the capital gains tax that will become payable on that property that you're leaving to someone else. So that's another tax you have to pay at death.
Jeez.
So this whole exercise is estate planning, and it's a very important exercise for all of us to do. You need to get hold of your financial planner and ask, please, can you run a proper estate plan? And if they're a good financial planner, they'll know how to do it and make sure that all these things are covered and you understand the possibility of what could happen one day.
Yeah, we hope that helps. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Jeez.
If you could only see Warren's face.
Yes. We're here to help, Warren.
Unbelievable.
Awesome.
Enjoy your day.
Thanks,
you very
guys.
much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, would like to subscribe, please visit our website www.growthfp.co.za. The information we have provided in this podcast is our personal opinion. For more detailed information, please discuss your financial situation with a financial planner.